Or are you seeing my slide screen?
We can see the presenter.
I'm sorry, one more time.
We can see the notes section, just like yesterday.
Got you. It's funny, I switched screens and yet it still did that. I don't understand it, but okay.
You're good now.
All right. But again, so all right, so okay. So today we're going to talk about homelessness outreach and waitlist process within the Balance of State CES. Now, I want to preface with this talk that much of what a lot of the stuff that you've already heard or we've already previewed is a good portion of the talk. I want to say that we're going to give a lot more time to the HMIS team in today's call to make sure that you just simply understand the process. I mean, I know that I have previously previewed this with most of the regional coalitions, and so you know kind of the logistics of it. Just for the sake of clarity, and for those who may not have been in on those calls, I am going to reiterate some of those talks. But ultimately, we're going to make sure we give Bethany enough time to be able to share about how this process plays out in HMIS. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So a quick general note here. The CES responsibility to outreach and permanent housing agencies. Of course, our CES is supposed to be able to help us collaborate with the data collected so that we're able to connect with shelter and outreach programs and add that data into our coordinated entry system, okay? And this includes our regional outreach programs. This includes our funded outreach programs. Those are mostly funded through ESG, and also emergency shelters. So whenever we look at our coordinated entry system, it is pulling data from all three of these particular sources. You've seen that graphic that I've shown multiple times, and I'm going to get to it in just a moment. You'll probably notice a few small adds to it, but essentially this is what we're trying to do. We just want to make sure that we are providing a coordinated entry system that is, pulling in data from all these different sources and making sure that these people have the assessment. So again, the 3 A's, you've heard me mention them. You can say it with me if you know it, but basically we're trying to assess, assist, and assign. Assess, assign, assist. All right. I usually say them out of order, but yeah, assess, assign, assist. That is what that's what we're in the business of doing. And so we want to make sure that that's done with not only is that done efficiently, but we want to do that with equity. And so we want to make sure that everybody has access, all the access points we are able to utilize the VI-SPDAT to prioritize households for referrals. That that you've heard. However, now we're going to talk more about the CES outreach and waitlist workflow. And so this is where many of you have seen that famed graphic that you've probably seen me peddle all across regional coalition meetings, and here it is. And so again, at a glance, at a helicopter view, this is the essential of what our waitlist is supposed to do. All right, it's supposed to be able to take people into our CES, sort them, and sort them by prioritize. All right, and then assign them to agencies. Again, something you've heard, but I want to make sure that we reiterate that is the goal. We take those clients, right? We take those clients from these 3 data sources from the coordinated entry system. We look at all 3 of these different, data source channels. But now here is the ebb and flow, or the main reason why we are bringing to your attention today about this training. The biggest part about our process is that most of what you know has not changed. All right, we are pulling, outreach is happening, outreach data is being put into the system, and here's where things are changing just a tad bit. Still, the process itself has not changed. Just the way we're actually fleshing out the process is changing. And so when we take a person into outreach, the next immediate step should be to add them to one of 2 lists. Keep in mind that I'm saying it not just in outreach. We're saying in outreach, and then immediately take that person or their family and put them from outreach into one of these 2 lists. On this particular slide, you see it highlighted, the regional follow-up wait list. Each coalition is going to have a designated wait list for those who have been engaged in outreach but may have refused housing or cannot be located. And so what we're going to see here, and if I were to go back to my previous graphic here, you may see on there to the far left that there's a hand sign, right? And that hand sign basically says that, listen, there's nothing, like, we're going to stop right here. We're going to do some case conferencing, okay, to see if they desire housing. And then you see the arrow going from the regional follow-up wait list over to the regional housing wait list. And so what that means is this: it means that we want to continue to case conference these people. These potential clients, essentially, to see if they desire to be housed. So in a nutshell, these are people you'll be working on your regional calls. All right. From the regional follow-up list would be the list of people you'll be working. You'll be case conferencing on your regional calls. And so again, we want to keep engaging the people in the regional follow-up list until they have the desire to be housed. And so then we move them from the follow-up list onto the housing wait list, the regional housing wait list. So I want to make sure you keep that in mind, is that the people in the follow-up list are not just simply languishing. We want to continue to case conference with the hopes that this person will change their mind. And keep in mind, we want to make sure that we deal in the idea, and one of the principles of our CES is client autonomy. It needs to be their choice to be housed, right? No matter how much you see, we have to, of course, we want to help them see the need, of course. However, it has to be their choice if they would like to be housed, okay? And then the second list is the regional housing wait list. And so this list is, again, we have one designated for each region of people who have been engaged in outreach and they are interested in housing. And the caveat there is they're interested in housing regardless of housing readiness. So if they express a desire to be housed, they are going on the regional housing wait list. And so their agency staff will be able to continuously check on them and case conference, and also work on their case until their housing is achieved. Okay, so that is really the biggest change in what we're doing here. That we have, instead of having this one wait list with people who may or may not want to be housed, now we have two lists: one of those who desire, one of those who do not. One of those who desire to be housed, one of those who do not desire to be housed. So, Hannah, is there anything you want to drop in here as I'm explaining?
No, you're good. You're right on track. I just want to make sure that people understand that it's really filling a gap that exists, that you'll probably get into this later into the conversation, and that this was a system that was asked for by multiple members of our outreach teams, that we were having people on wait list, just languishing on wait list because they were at the top of the wait list but didn't want housing. And it was difficult to really identify who should be approached for housing when you have people on the list that were sitting there for 200 days, 300 days that do not want to be housed. And then also we were having a gray area where people were dropping off of the wait list and just sitting in an outreach program without being on a list at all. So this is why that two list system is really important. There are going to be no gaps in our system with these two lists. There's not going to be any gray area that people can fall into. It's either you want housing, you're going to be on the housing list. You don't want housing, you're going to be on the follow-up list. Go right ahead, Reggie. Thank you.
Good deal. Oh, no problem. And so with that being said, our focus for the next part of this step will be assignments. And so with that being said, assignments for projects will be taken from the regional housing wait list. And so no one should be taken directly from the follow-up list into a program. They should be taken from the regional housing wait list into a program. And keep in mind that the agency will be responsible for removing the client from the housing wait list and adding the assigned clients into their program. And so what that means is that you have that regional pool of eligible participants that will be prioritized, and you should be taking off of that list and putting them into your program so that you can begin to engage them and moving them towards the housing process, regardless of if you have housing stock ready or not. And so when I say that, it doesn't mean that you don't have quote unquote room in your program. Even if you have not identified a unit just yet, but you know that you have space and utilization for one, you can take them into your program and begin to case manage them in lieu of the housing placement coming, okay? And so again, not much of a change. Now it's just 2 lists. I keep reiterating that. And so with that being said, let me get back to the overall graphic. Again, you have these 2 lists, the regional follow-up wait list, in which we will continue this the case conference. And then you have the regional housing wait list, which we will use to which you, the COC project, will be using to assign people into your program, so that you can continue, so you can continue help clients continue their journey towards housing stability. And so if we have to boil things down, although the graphic, I think, can bring some simplicity to this, what I really want to do is I want to really break this thing down. And I want you to understand what it means to participate in the process for our coordinated entry system. It's really 4 different parts here. Number 1, outreach. And so this is really the path of a person in the midst, throughout our CES, throughout our coordinated entry system. So again, they should be found in outreach, and then on a wait list, then in an agency, and then they should be into move-in, all right? Every person should be following that path within CES participation, with the assumption that the end is housing, of course. But we want to make sure that every person that we touch gets into those 4 spaces. Again, outreach, wait list, into the agency program, and move in, all right? That's what it means when we say, are you participating in CES? And to further drive that point home, let's talk about project enrollment. When we actually we're taking people from regional wait lists, we want to make it clear that these agencies are supposed to be assigning people to their programs from the coordinated entry system. Again, that same path: outreach, wait list, program, into housing with a move-in date. All right, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, because Bethany will probably drive that home. Make sure we have move-in dates. We need to make sure that we're reporting out with accuracy about move-in dates. And so with that being said, I want to give you the goal that we're shooting towards here. And keep in mind that this goal is not an arbitrary goal. This is a goal that has been within our COC's program rating and ranking process, that 95% of project entries must originate from the coordinated entry system. We should have an exhaustive, detailed list of all persons who are homeless, or most people who are homeless in our area. There should be very few people that we are not engaging and coming across within our system. And so with that being said, most of our entries should be coming from our CES, okay? And so when we say project enrollment, or when we're saying these project entries, we're saying take them from our list, put them in your programs so that they can be a part of the system. So if they're coming from out of nowhere, we didn't know. Of course, some of that will be happening. There are caveats to that thing. But however, for the most part, a lot of people we should be engaging in many regards already. And so again, most of our entries, 95%, should be coming or originating from our coordinated entry system. They should be people we've either we're identifying, or have been identified, or identifying. Okay, and so with that being said, we want to make sure that our system is efficient. That is a telling dynamic of our system, that we understand what's going on in our homeless community. And not only that, we want to have a system that's not only valuable because we're meeting a standard. We want to make sure that our system is valuable because it has benefits for you too. All right. And so with that, I want to bring up the value of the CES implementation process, what it means, or the benefits of what it means to trust the process. So when people ask me, because throughout this process, from several different angles, I've gotten this idea of, and this is something we've been talking about not only in this last few months, but probably the last couple of years, about how do we get credit? How do I know that we're functionally working in the CES system? How do I know that I'm participating truly in our CES? Or what are the benefits of participating in the CES? Well, here are the benefits. Here are the benefits of trusting the process. Number one, understand that you're contributing points to your overall COC rating and ranking total. Okay, so if you're going in for COC dollars, when we go through the ranking and rating review, we use the rating COC, a HUD rating and ranking tool. And so from that, one of the sections in there is your participation in coordinated entry. And so with that comes a weighted score based on the percentage of people or the percentage of your project entries that are coming from the coordinated entry system. So you're contributing to that point total. And not only that, your reported waitlist project entries are also reported to one of the local funders, MHC, to certify your participation in CES for future funding cycles. So when we have the report for MHC, we run reports, and so we can show them, okay, here's what this person is participating in the coordinated entry system. And here are entries they've taken from the list itself. Not only that, the COC can actively recognize your agency as participating in CES within your membership certificate. You're helping also to clarify the reporting for HMIS. Bethany and the team appreciate that very much so. And also, we're also helping to contribute and do better outcomes within our COC system performance measures. In fact, Bethany, I guess about a couple of days ago, if I'm not mistaken, Bethany has submitted the LSA, which is our system performance measure report. And so this helps us to really clarify, many different measures, including how long it takes or the average length of time it takes for us to take someone from the wait list or from putting a person into program to housing. And so with that being said, I'd also like to bring up this one last thing before I get ready to turn it over to Bethany here. One question that I've run across, or I just want to at least reiterate within the process, is about calculating the length of time from basically in program to housing move-in, or at least from homelessness to housing move-in. And so I want to clarify what we mean by that, by this simple graphic. When we're looking at that, here's what this is really consisting of. From the moment a person is assigned into your program, the clock starts ticking, okay? Now keep in mind, again, I want to reiterate, this is regardless of whether or not you have a housing unit on deck to just immediately move them into. When you see someone on the list who is prioritized and needs to be, who is at the top of the priority, and needs to be in a program to be housed, you should be taking them off of the list, putting them into your program. And once you put them into your program, the clock starts, okay? And that clock doesn't stop until there is a move-in date. When that move-in date is put in, that calculates the amount of time it took you to house that person from the moment you engage with them within your agency program. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear. And so what we don't want to do is let a person languish on the list for days on end. And then just when we think we found housing stock, okay, now move them on, then give them, and then say, hey, we move this person in, right? We want to move that person into our program, begin the engagement in case management, and then be able to tell the story of what it means that, hey, this person was in our program for X amount of days, and when we got a unit and we got the key, we housed them on this date. And so that's what we mean as one of those indicators that we want to be able to accurately calculate. But again, to do that, we need your help. We need you to accurately, not only take people out of our wait list and into your agency program, but also make sure that those move-in dates are being put in as accurately as possible, as efficiently as possible as well. And so again, the only way this thing was going to work is that we're going to need your help. And not only do we need your help, but we also need you to trust the process. We know that there are things that are still not quite ironed out. And so for that, we're going to have sessions like on tomorrow, where we're going to talk about what it could mean for us to assign, for assignments to be done within our CES process from a third party, i.e. the CES navigators, and other facets of it that we want to make sure that we understand as we are looking forward to this, change on March 1st. But with that being said, is there anything you would like to add, and are there any questions?
Yes. Thank you, Reggie. There's one thing I just want to add about how the waitlist will be case conferenced, how we actually have our waitlist calls. So what we will do is during our regional coalition calls, at the very end, we always work the wait list. We're still going to do that, but now we'll have a very targeted wait list conversation. So when we work the follow-up list, we're only talking about outreach. We're only talking about, when did you last see this person? When did you last offer this person housing? When did they last refuse housing? And then when we talk about the housing wait list, that's really going to be me talking to the housing agencies about, when can you add this person into your program? Who can serve this person? What is the timeline on this person? What's your availability, what your utilization availability, things like that. So our conversation is going to be even more targeted when we work those wait lists, which is going to be better for all of us. Instead of this, like, where are they? It's going to be, what's the plan for this person, whether they want housing or if they don't want housing. So that's going to be really helpful. And I just want to reiterate too, why do we even need to worry with wait lists? I always get asked this. They're like, why can't we just add people in the program when we want to? It all comes back to prioritization. We have got to make sure that we are prioritizing people based on their vulnerability. So we have to use the VI-SPDAT. We have to have a wait list. We have to have a way to compare people's vulnerabilities to make sure that we're housing and offering housing to those that are most vulnerable first. So that I just want to make sure that that's really clear, and making our housing process more streamlined for our agencies, making our waitlist process more streamlined for our agencies. That's our goal here, and to make sure that we're offering the absolute best service to our homeless population that we can. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Okay. Are there any questions before we segue into the next portion of our training, where Bethany is going to do a HMIS walkthrough? Does anyone have any questions? I know many of you have heard a lot of this information before, so it shouldn't be necessarily brand new, but I just want to make sure we give clarity wherever the clarity needs to be given. Okay. Well, with that being said, I'm going to relinquish control, and we're going to turn control over to Bethany so that she can do the second part of our presentation.
Okie dokie. So most of this you guys have already been pretty familiar with when it comes to waitlist. So hopefully I just go over different scenarios today that will address just the changes of, like, when you put someone in a follow-up list and how to even switch them over. So that's what I hope we accomplish today. I know that not every scenario I will be able to define. There might be times there's a rare case where we're not really sure what to do. Just know that you can ask, we can, decide what list they need to go on, or when they need to be, moved over. And at any point, you guys can ask questions, just send a chat. Hannah can, speak up if we need to answer it in the middle of the training. So for anyone that's new on here and, is very new to waitlist and how it functions, just know that if we need to do more of a one-on-one training, we can also schedule that so that we can help you understand it specifically for your project. All right, again, Reggie said there's going to be 2 wait lists now for each regional coalition. There'll be a housing and a follow-up. So you will still use your, your regional coalition outreach. If you have your own outreach, like Mute is funded through ESG for street outreach, and then there's other agencies that are funded for street outreach. Even in those, you can use the regional coalition wait list. So if it's the follow-up or the housing one, you will just do it the same way. These specific outreach programs are for agencies that don't specifically have outreach, or when you're doing like a team going out and doing outreach and there's no specific agency doing it, then you would utilize the regional coalition outreach. Okay. So today I'm just going to use Delta again, just like I did yesterday. And so today I hope I can define like why we have the 2 lists, even though Reggie's kind of already said that, but just a more practical reason in awards why we're doing that. And then when to enter into each, and then how do I even do it? So if at any point you get confused, just let me know. We're going to look at 3 different situations in awards. All of these clients have been entered in outreach already. So I'm not going to do an intake, and I'm not going to go through a VI-SPDAT. So again, if you need training in those, just let us know and we will train you. So we're not going to go through those details of how to enter those things. They're already entered in the system. So there's 3 different people that we're going to look at. The first one is Duncan Hines. And this one I'm going to search. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to look for my client. So this client has been entered into our Delta CES Outreach. Okay, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look at the consumer history report and just show you that a VI-SPDAT has already been done on the client. And this client is refusing housing. Okay, so we're going to say this client is not interested in housing at all, but we want to make sure that he's on a list and that we're continually following up with them. So that's why he will go on the follow-up list instead of the housing list. So to do that, we're going to go to his status here. Okay, and go to his face sheet. Same way you would do the regular housing wait list. We'll go to face sheet and you'll go to add to waiting list. Now in your drop down, there'll be 2 options. You'll have the follow-up wait list or the housing by name list. Housing is for anyone that is wanting housing, even if they're not ready, but they're wanting housing, they desire housing, you'll put them on the housing list. For this client, because they're just not interested right now, I'm putting him on the follow-up list. I'm saying Duncan Hines is a male. I'm saying he. I'm not really sure. Okay, so here in the note, I can say client is not interested in housing. And then whatever other information, maybe in your case conferencing, you received more information and you want to enter it in the note there, you can. But I'm just going to put that basic info and say the client consents and click save. Okay. Like I said yesterday, we want to make sure we always check our work and see that the information is there. So I'm going to go home and to view, I just want to view the wait list. I'm going to go to census, go to profile and say view waiting list. You have your 2 lists there. So I can look at my follow-up list or I can look at my housing list. Don't get them confused. That's why I put that word in all caps. So it would help you know this is housing and this is follow-up. So I'm going to go to my follow-up list and click view. I have 3 people on the list right now that need to be followed up with. Okay, so the one that I just added was Duncan and he made a 10. So all of these people that are on this follow-up list have a VI-SPDAT. But you guys know there's some people in outreach that you meet and will not do an assessment with you. So if that's the case, it's okay. You can still add them to the follow-up list, and I'll show that with the next scenario, next client. So it's just showing that we actually did that properly. The client is on there, scored a 10, and that's the note that I entered. So that's just checking your work. The next person is you'll like this one. Is Pillsbury, okay? All right, this client here was entered on 2/2/22. If I go here and I look at the consumer history report, you see no VI-SPDAT has been done. This client's refusing to have an assessment done. Now, the client, after you develop a relationship with the client, they can say, okay, they're fine with doing assessment now, and then you can do the assessment with them then. But you still want to put them in the follow-up before that time comes, just because we know that there's some encampments that you guys might go to, that there's some people that are willing, but some that might not be. You still want to know that you want to continue following up with that client. So we want to add that person. I'm going to go back, click the status, click face sheet, and it's going to basically the same exact way. Add to waiting list, choose my follow-up. Click save. Okay, and so now we have 4 people that will be on the list. And I'm going to view it because I want to check my work. And now all 4 on there. But as you see, Pillsbury has no VI-SPDAT total score, and so therefore they're at the very bottom. All right, so that is just what it will start to look like. And again, you probably need to update notes on here. Like as you're doing case conferencing, things might change. So if Pillsbury decides they want to have an assessment and it's no longer no VI-SPDAT completed, right? Because now they have a VI-SPDAT, you would need to go in and change that note. And it's really easy to change a note. To do that, you'll just go to status, face sheet, go back to add to waiting list. You're not adding them. You're going to go over here to the consumer waiting list index. All right. And here I would select that where they are on the list, click edit, and then I can edit the note there. So that's where you'll go in and edit the note that will show on the actual wait list.
And Bethany, I just want to reiterate, make sure you're putting in the note that they refused housing. And then every time you offer them housing and they refuse it, go back and update that note with the date, because I don't want there to ever be an issue in the future that someone's on a follow-up list when they should have been on the housing list or vice versa. So making sure we document the client's choice on our wait list notes are very important.
Yeah. So anytime you are reaching out, like if you're doing even attempted contact, I know a lot of you, and you should be putting a note in a contact login anytime you're even doing attempted contact. Well, on here, you can say, you know, face-to-face on, you know, whatever day, 2/16/22. Or if it's not face-to-face, say attempted contact or something like that, like you went and you searched for this client. And so putting notes like that will really help when it comes to case conferencing. So thanks for saying that, Hannah. Okay, so now that we've gone over Duncan Hines, Pillsbury, and now we're going to look at General Mills. Okay, we're going to do all of them. I'm not sure which one is your favorite, but I think Duncan Hines is mine. So with General Mills, we're going to move this client from the follow-up list to the housing list. So this client has decided that they want to be housed. It could be that it's going to take time. Maybe they don't have an ID. You know, it could be that they're going to be on the list for a little longer, but they've verbally said they want to be housed. If that's the case, they need to be moved from a follow-up list to the housing list. Now, I know that there's going to be cases where a client, and there was someone that I had on here, I think it was Betty Crocker on the list, that said she, or we said on there that the client could not live independently. Now, if that's the case, then it could be that, you know, you guys are going to have to find another solution for that client. And they might just only ever stay on the follow-up list. It might not be that they ever move to the housing list. And that can also be, you know, something that you guys have to look at. You have to make sure that anyone you put in is on either one of the list, either a follow-up list or a housing list. Okay, so for our General Mills, I'm going to look them up, and they're already in the system. They have a VI-SPDAT done, and they're on the list. We know that they're already on the list. So I'm going to go here to their status, click face sheet, go to add to waiting list. Again, already on the list. We saw them on the list just a moment ago. And I'm going to choose the consumer waiting list index. Okay. All right, so here is our where they are on the follow-up list here. So when we're wanting to add them, move them from the follow-up to a housing list, this is what you'll do. Really basic. You're going to put an end date, and then you're going to add them to the housing. So I'm going to go here to follow up, select it. I'm going to edit. So let's just say today's the day that they decided. Just kidding. Today's the 17th. Okay. You can leave that note there. You're just putting an end date and you click save. So if I go back up here, I can go back to where I was, and then I'm going to add. So here I will add, and I'll put housing by name list, and whatever you guys enter here, client needs ID, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Consent, click save, and client should now be on the list. So I'm going to go back to this consumer waiting list index, and you should be able to see Uh-oh, did it not save it? Yeah, it has an end date there. Just kidding. For some reason, it's not showing here. Let's just go back and search for our client. Face sheet, add to waiting list, consumer wait list. There you go. Sometimes when you're going back and forth, it might not show the update. So you might have to go back home and then search again. So here you go. It's got 2/17/22. And then they were added on this date to the housing list. So you can always go back and look on the actual list to see if it's, been done. So that's what we'll do. We'll go here to census. We'll go to profile, view waiting list. I want to look at my follow-up list first. And we'll see that General Mills is no longer on the follow-up list. If I go back, you guys are going to get to see all of our housing. We should be able to see there's General Mills right there now on the Delta by name list. Florida, I'll make sure to delete General Mills so you won't house them, okay? All right, so that is how you'll take them and you'll switch them over. It's pretty simple, to be honest with you. Like, you're literally just having to put a date in and then add them to the housing list. So there's no, to me, I think that is probably the most streamlined way of, making sure they're on the right list. Always look at the consumer. So here, if we go look at, you can look here and see under the consumer history report and see placements and all of that. But that's not going to show if they're on what list they're on under consumer history report. It'll only show once they're placed. So here, this is just moving from one list to another list. So to see that, you have to go to their face sheet, to the consumer waiting list index. You have to look at the index to see their flow on a list. Okay. So here you should see the timeline when it comes to the list. And it could be that you have clients that have been on the follow-up list multiple times, and you'll get to see, a record of that. In some different situations that might happen. You have a client that's on the follow-up list, refuse housing, but then resolves that homelessness. And maybe they, go and stay with someone for a while, but then they become homeless again, but they still refuse to be housed by any housing program. They'll be on the follow-up list again. So some of the same situations that you find on the housing wait list, when it comes to resolving homelessness, someone passes away, all these other different type of situations that happen, you'll still need to do the same steps that you did under the housing wait list, under the follow-up wait list. So you'll still need to do a discharge. You'll still need to put an end date here for that client. And then an event. So you'll have to do an event. If there's an outcome of any kind, you'll have to do an event. Now, that's if they never get to a housing, and if a housing organization never houses them, okay? This is only if some other outcome happens for the client. You'll still need to do a discharge, still need to do an event. Okay, does anyone want me to go through an event? Show of another client, maybe we can go over Duncan Hines, maybe we can say that client resolve their homelessness. Do y'all want to look at resolving that homelessness and then doing an event?
I'm just going to go ahead and say yes, just because that is
Okay.
something that we've been working on cleaning up through the CES Navigator.
Okay.
And then I just want to make two statements before you move over to doing events. One being if there's a client on the housing list, somebody asked me this, it was a great question. Somebody that's on the housing list that when you first met them, they're like, yeah, I want to be housed. I'll be housed as soon as possible. But then when you go to approach them about housing, they say, no, I don't want to be housed. You can move them back over to the follow-up list. The same process. You just move them back over. To
Oh,
the
yeah.
follow-up list. Same exact process.
Yeah,
And then
good
also,
point.
so thank you for whoever brought that up. It was Sarah. And then the other thing, Jade brought up this point too, that if you're moving someone for follow-up to housing waitlist and you were not able to VI-SPDAT originally, you need to do a VI-SPDAT with them immediately before adding them to the housing wait list. You do not add anyone to the housing wait list without a VI-SPDAT, because how do you prioritize somebody if you don't know their score? So just make sure you do that. Okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll just look at, so say Duncan Hines has resolved his homelessness, okay? He is no longer homeless. So what we're gonna do is go here to the status. We'll go to face sheet, go back to add to waiting list, look at the consumer's waiting list index, same way you would do it on the housing list. I'm gonna select it. I'm going to edit and put an end date of when the client resolved their homelessness. So let's just say it was today. Click save. So now the client's no longer on the follow-up list. And there's two other things that have to be done. We've done an end date. We now have to do a discharge. And sorry, do an event and do a discharge. So you have to do all those things. Once a client's no longer there, you have to erase them on any list that they could, or report that they could be on. So to do that, we're going to go over here. Sorry, we're going to go to charts, go to services, forms, and do an event. Okay. Duncan Hines is already there. Click continue. Create new HMIS event. Click update here. Put the day of the event, which was today. And what was it? For this client, the client resolved. So I'm going to say problem solve, diversion, whatever it may be. Or if they went to some other program that's listed here, you guys could put that. Whatever happened that the client no longer needs to be able to, is no longer homeless. And then it says, if the event type is problem solving, diversion, rapid rehousing, then was the client housed, rehoused in a safe alternative? Yes. And then click save. Only 3 questions there. Sorry.
Was there a question?
Mandatory.
Okay. Hey, Kathy, did you have a question? Go right ahead, Bethany.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back home. So now with Duncan has resolved homelessness. So I took him off of the wait list. I did an event. And now I will discharge him. So go to census, go to discharge, process discharge. He's under roster. Once you find your client, and I'll just put in the information. We're just going to say that he left for a housing opportunity. And then you guys just need to answer these questions down below. So we'll say that staying or living with family permanent. Not even sure like what here. Oh, there we go. No, he wasn't referred. So what do you guys normally put here when someone's resolved homelessness?
Other.
Okay, you could do that too. We'll just say all right. Again, you can use other here. You cannot use other in destination. Okay. Do not use other in destination down here. Don't do that.
What if they did
But
die?
What if they what?
What if they did die?
You do not need coordinate entry system.
Sorry.
If you look in the chat, coordinate entry system events are only for housed outcomes.
Okay. Thank you.
Look in your chat. I put an outline of when you would do a CES event and when you wouldn't. Thanks, Bethany. Sorry I jumped in.
But again, on these other situations down here, you guys can use all of these. We're just saying don't use this one right here.
Okay.
Okay. New residence county. I don't remember where I said this one was from, but we'll just say Bolivar. All right. And if you want to put a note here, remember you can put it under discharge summary. apply. And now client has been discharged. You see the date. They came in on 1/31, discharged on 2/17. We can go here to the consumer history report to look and see everything that we've done. So we screened the client, we did a VI-SPDAT, there's been a note, and then there was you won't see a placement because there was never a placement. The client was never placed into a housing program. And so the client is now discharged. They're no longer showing up in outreach, and they're off of the list. Okay. So when someone self-resolves or someone goes in, passes away, whatever it may be, just when someone self-resolves, there's different, like they don't go into a housing program. You still have to do an end date on the wait list. You have to do an event and you have to discharge.
If you have any questions about coordinating entry system events, just let us know. I know a lot of you have gotten emails from Robert. Robert has been working on those. If you'll check your chat box, I put in a little bit of an outline on like when you need an event, when you don't need an event. Copy and paste that somewhere if you have any questions, but those need to be done the same day that you discharge someone from outreach. Don't wait 2 weeks to do your events, or wait until we send you a list of 40 people to do events on. Okay. So those need to be done in real time as well.
Okay, anyone have anything they want me to go over? Like I said, there's a good bit of scenarios that can happen in different processes. Some of the biggest things that you just need to remember is when they can be put on a follow-up list, how to switch them over to the housing list when they're ready. And some of all the other aspects are still there. Like you still have to do, take them off the list if they resolve, you still have to discharge. It's just knowing when to put them on what list.
And one thing I'll mention, like what do we do now, right? Because everybody that's currently on a wait list is on the housing wait list. So all of the current wait list we have is now the housing wait list. So what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is making sure that we're moving everyone that does not want housing, or we have not been able to locate in the last 90 days, over to the follow-up list. So that's going to be a process. That's going to be a couple of different conversations that we have, especially with our outreach teams, just to make sure that everyone that's currently on a wait list is accounted for, and which wait list should they remain on.
Okay, yeah, so if anybody doesn't have if you don't have questions, just remember we're doing how-tos. Hopefully that will answer some of your questions, and you can just print out the how-to, have it beside you while you go and do it for the first time. By March 1st, we should have it to where people that are refusing housing or can't live independently or switched over to the follow-up list. Everyone will have access at that point to all of the list. So it will all begin March 1st. Hopefully it will all be streamlined. We might have some hiccups. And again, you guys can just email us and let us know if one client needs to be moved over. And then on March 1st, that is when you guys will actively, any new person you encounter, that's when you will determine which list they will go on. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bethany. Any questions for Reginald? Any questions for me? Any questions for Bethany? Like Reggie said, the process is not changing that much. It's just we're going to have two options. When we encounter someone in outreach, we'll have two options to appropriately address their housing wants and needs. So any questions? No? You're going to save them for me? You're going to call me later and be like, oh, I had a question, but I didn't want to say it. You can always put it in the chat anonymously and I'll just address it that way. If not, I'll turn it to Reggie if there's anything else you wanted to say, or anything you want to just reiterate before we get off. If not, we will be adjourned.
Not much. I mean, I was gonna mention what you just mentioned about, hey, this process is not really changing. We just have these two lists now. I know we keep hearing at home, but I want to make sure you understand that we're moving forward, but there's not a whole lot of change involved in regards to this. But I like to say, for those who may be admins, keep in mind that tomorrow we'll have part 3 of our series of trainings. tomorrow we'll be talking about the possibility of future goals for our CES in the lane of assignment. So again, that is for execs, admins, leaders, so that they can give feedback towards what that could look like in the coming future. That is tomorrow, Friday at 10 a.m. So we'd love to have those leaders on board for that. But other than that, thank you guys for attending. We will be sharing some feedback in the next couple of days regarding this training. And more than that, I hope you guys have a great day. Hope to see you again soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I'll be on for just a bit if anybody wants to stay and have any questions.